It has been a dominant day from Australia, no doubt in that session. 34th Test century from Stephen Smith, his 5th in a Boxing Day Test match with Ravi Shastri here, his 11th against India. And it's also been headlines that Verat Kohli has dominated when it comes to the Australian media. We'll talk about that, but first let's talk about our impressions from the morning session, because Australia and Steve Smith had a plan and India's bowlers have enough of a plan. Australia all the way in that.
All the way. And I think India ran out of ideas. There's absolutely no doubt about that, because what Australia did was there would have been a game plan. Let's make sure we don't lose too many wickets in that first 45 minutes. Try and get another 50 runs on the board. They were 311 for 6. Their first aim would have been 350. But the rate at which they scored the runs, made the job far easier. It just, I thought the bowling was pretty ordinary. They ran out of ideas, India. Spin wasn't used as much as it should have. It took 40 overs, a gap of 40 overs before Jadeja was introduced into the attack. It took 40 overs for Washington Sundar to bowl his first over. So when you're playing two spinners, sometimes you have to ask the question, why did you play two spinners? What was the need if you don't trust them? And they paid the price for it, because Steve Smith is relentless. He's a master batsman. He's did the hard yards at the Gabba, and that's paid off in this innings, because he was more like his fluent self in this innings. And just the way he adapts to different conditions, different bowlers with his footwork. His footwork changes. Occasions, Steve Smith is there.
You started in such disarray when you started as an opener. The year is ending for Steve Smith, where it's almost like reset, back to business. There was a Jasprit Bumrah who did try to bowl in a channel to incite him, but it just was a little bit of negotiation from both ends.
Both ends. And once he got the opportunity to get inside the line of the ball, he hit those sixes as well, and some shots on the onside. But, that was a real contest. Smith knew he had to get past Bumrah, and the runs would come easily. And let's not forget Pat Cummins.
Axis Max Life Insurance partnership, because India have now conceded a 550-plus partnerships, including the century stand between the captain.
It's a different matter, and that's where I thought India would have bowled a lot more spin.
Because spin was getting some of the false shots.
And there was turn, the ball was gripping. And sometimes when a spinner comes on, there's a sense of complacency. As you saw with Cummins, when the field was up, they didn't just keep a long on, long off for, quite a bit of time. That was the field. They could just knock the singles. Once the field came up, he took a chance and, was dismissed. So I thought spin could have been used a lot more, especially when you pick two spinners.
Well, you've had it over 100 runs that Australia have managed to do so. Just one wicket to fall. Let's show you the highlights from the morning session.
54 for 7, Australia ahead.
More than 140 runs scored in that session. A 16th century for Steve Smith against India across formats. That's how much he likes scoring those big ones against India, and just one wicket to fall. So that has been the dominance that we've seen from Australia. Ravi, let's talk about something that has dominated this day since we've been walking in, and that is the headlines and what the media have had to say about Virat Kohli. They are calling for the dethroning of the king, in a sense. Now, before we get into this conversation, you're going to be fined. This is what we find the offence to be. 20% of your match fees goes. The way that it's portrayed in the media, you've experienced this before. In Australia, it happens. Australia has had a history of great players who've also shown aggression, intent, sometimes in manners that could be considered offensive. No real reaction there from the media. So how does it really stand, this uproar that we've
won? And a 20% fine. So there's a benchmark set there. When the umpires, they have a record of the players over the last 2 years. How often have they offended, the law in many ways. There are some points given over there. There's a voting process in place that takes place. And then
So this has been handed out. Now let's talk about the treatment of Virat Kohli. A couple of years ago, when Virat Kohli was coming here to Australia, I remember media outlets saying, watch out, the king is coming. Come to the stadiums because the king is coming. Now, ever since he's walked into Melbourne, there's been footage that we've seen as what happens at the airports. That sort of imagery. It seems like, because it's Virat Kohli and it's an iconic player, that you want to go a little harsher. It's your experience, you tell me.
Yes, and it's in many ways, it's a little bit of desperation also. So, you're 3 test matches into the series, 3-0 up. or 2-0 up, the headlines might have been different. So when you're wanting to win badly, it's not often a country comes to Australia and doesn't lose in 10 years. A test match at the MCG, or doesn't win a series in Australia, for 7-8 years. So, I know where that's coming from. It's built up over a period of time. It had to come out somewhere. Someone had to be the target, and then they got the opportunity with that physical incident yesterday. When that physical contact incident happened, they said, this is our chance to get the pens out and get the paintbrush out, and start doing all sorts of things. I saw that thing on Virat's nose.
Yeah.
I mean, they forgot to paint the seam there. Then that would have been a ball.
They didn't talk to you before that.
They will go to any level.
There is also, we understand, there's freedom of press and freedom of expression in those ways. The other thing is when you walked in here, and we're just telling you our perspective because we're sitting here in Melbourne. Obviously, we are working for a subcontinent Indian broadcaster, and Ravi has played cricket here. He's come with the team. They've coached here. They've had the success here. There are a lot of former Australian players that are not happy with the fine that has been handed out. But there has been a generation of great Australian players that have, I don't even want to call it behavior, but they've displayed that aggression on the field. And
you can say the player is lucky because of physical contact. You can say whatever you want. You can pass whatever judgment you want. And at the end of roofs of houses and tom-tomming about it, nothing is going to change.
Well, we won't have a lunch show to talk about it.
Yeah, it's 20% done, dusted. Chalo. And I promise you, as much as you're saying about the Australian media, the crowd, deep inside, they'll want Kohli to come out and get 100.
Of course, yeah.
I'm telling you.
There's a lot of love here.
It's both ways. They would want Virat Kohli to come out there and get 100. A typical Australian. And then you'll see. It'll be something. But they'll want him to, come out there and get some runs as well. Because they've seen that happening in the past.
We can just share I can share a small incident. There was a breach of field. We did have someone who came onto the field, went towards the Indian players. Rohit Sharma, as usual, avoided. Virat Kohli actually put his arm around that young fellow, walked with him, tapped him on the back. There was a sense of peace and calm, said, okay, carry on. And on that note, we'll take a breather when we come back. If you want to see India bat, India have to figure out how to get the best out of Australia, and Steve Smith will discuss that when we return.
This Boxing Day test.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. So still conducive for batting. What does Rohit Sharma do with his game plans, his field setting, and when does he put more faith in his spinners and bowlers?
I think he has to now after lunch because they bowled quite a bit, the fast bowlers. They would be tired, and the first aim should be to try and wrap up this Australian innings quickly because you don't want them to have that psychological edge where they go past 500 and then they can have men round the bat. Scoreboard pressure at the MCG plays a huge role. You might taller, so the ball will come down from a great height, and I think Pat Cummins will be a danger man once the bounce gets variable. And don't take your eye off. I know everyone will talk of pace, Stark, Cummins, of Scotty Boland. He will hit the right areas. You watch Bay 13 when he gets the ball in his hand. If you think there aren't enough people at the MCG, you will know there are enough people at the MCG when Scotty gets the ball in his hand from Bay 13.
To get towards the Indian batting, you first have to deal with a Steve Smith that is set with what has been his fifth. He's so confident. How do you induce the fall shot? Do you set the field differently?
In fact, he will give you chances now because I think he'll look to up the ante straight away after lunch. So therein lies your chances. You don't want to try anything too flash, just keep it in the right areas because he's going to take the chances and probably attack.
For 474.
Thanks so much for joining us here on Cricket Live with Sunil Gavaskar and Justin Langer. And these are the beauties, the vagrancies of Test cricket. You have a partnership that is just blossoming after losing the Indian captain early. And then it is the Australian captain right at the stroke of tea. You look back at a session where a wicket fell early from India's innings and then a wicket right towards the end there.
Australian captain.
And really makes a session go Australia's way. That's a morale boost, and that has been India's most disciplined batter so far, one of them.
I think so. It's a terrible sound, isn't it? And how often do you see the ball or two balls before a break, whether it's a drinks break or a lunch or tea break, And KR Rahul did not look like...
Been in global cricket, one of the two most extraordinary openers that we've spoken about. So there was so much talk about Rohit Sharma, remember, reviving his career as an opener. Now coming back, should he open, should he not? He pushed himself down the order in the previous test. Came back to open in this test match. It not just how much he lasted, but the manner of his dismissal. What does that tell you?
Well, and the way he was batting, the way he was shaping up till that beauty of a delivery from Cummins, did make you wonder why was that one wicket wasted? Who knows? I mean, Rohit Sharma coming at 3 now, with maybe India 50 for 1, would make a difference.
Gill in this test match. However, you do have the Steve Smith, Abila Optus top performer, a 34th test century for him. Only Steve Smith could get
driving like that. We haven't seen it for a while, but when he is, you know he's at his very best. It was a great innings, and I loved when he scored his 100. It was almost, last test was a tough innings. I spoke to him and he said, I had to work so hard for that. Today it was like just nodding, yes, I'm back, and that's a very good test 100, and he was acknowledging that to himself as much as he was to the crowd.
No wonder Abila was Spain's top performer, but it was just towards the end for India to extract those wickets. A few reviews, a little bit of time, the tail frustrating India, but you managed to restrict what was looking a total that was going to go towards 500. So how would India be reviewing their bowling performance towards the end?
They would have to do a serious review about their bowling, because they knew the
Boxing Day, and it also was a little bit of an incident in the field that everyone has been talking about. It has dominated the headlines so far. A young teenager against Verat Kohli himself. They have similar shades of energy, if you can put it that way. Just a quick review of how Verat Kohli now has been viewed in Australia's media.
Too far.
Look, ever since Virat Kohli has come into Melbourne, he's dominated the headlines. Now let's get a few things clear as we have this conversation. One is we're not taking anything away from the debut of Sam Constance, nor are we condoning any form of physicality on a cricket place. Now what has happened is the match referee has decided, okay, you're fined 20% of your match fees. But Australian media and some Australian commentators and broadcasters are not happy with the degree of the punishment doled out. So that's what I want to ask you in terms of your perception, because it's happened before in the past between both nations where things have got heated.
Well, I think you would say that yes, the punishment may be light because of what you see, what the experience on that. But I'm given to understand that the fine is 20% and 1 demerit point. That's the maximum allowed. So that is what has been levied on him with 1 demerit point. So no special favors have been done to him. You cannot hang a man for picking somebody's pocket. So that is what the Australian media is asking.
So why is there an uproar there?
Well, because the Australian media is asking that he should be hanged I'm just
paraphrase
for a minor offence, and they think that he's got away because he's a Kohli. But that's not the thing. I know in the year, if I'm Andy Pycroft is a referee here as well, then Jasprit Bumrah was reprimanded for a level 1 inappropriate physical contact against England's Ollie Pope. Then in Nepal player Arjun Kumar also had this, but in his
players, right? So you see some aggression, and that's part of the drama. The third point I want to make, and I want to make this very clear on this station, is this isn't an Australian media versus an Indian. The media are brutal, full stop. So they'll find the targets, and what we're seeing here is exactly what they want. They're talking about that headline in India in front of 1 billion cricket-loving people. That's what they want. That's what the media is all about. So it's not about Virat. It's not about the Indian cricket team, because I promise you, from personal experience, not that long ago, I'm an Australian. I'm a red-blooded Australian who played for my country and coached my country and loves my country, and I copped it as badly as Virat's copping it now. So it's not a personal attack on India per se, that's just the way the media now works.